What's up, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here, live for another episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is a big one. The last few days, the news cycle in Buffalo for the Buffalo Bills has been pretty perplexing, to say the least. I have to dive into this. I have to tackle this as hard and as swiftly as I possibly can right here, right now on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Whether you're tuning in on Facebook, whether you're tuning in on my YouTube channel, much appreciated as well. Follow me on Twitter at Ryan Thomas Take, as well on Instagram at Ryan Thomas Take for more of my takes and my content. Greatly appreciate the love and support from Bills Mafia, Sabres fans, as well as combat sports fans, mixed martial arts fans, or boxing fans. You're all welcome. And you're welcome for this coverage. So let's dive into this storyline that it's safe to say if it didn't get our attention as Bills fans, something would be seriously wrong. This all got our attention, whether we look at this storyline and give it true validity or validate the story in and of itself is another question. But when a report comes out, the journalism 101 in me says to myself, where is this report coming from? How can I look at this report and say that this is true or untrue? And when you're in this area of Western New York, you hear a lot of different things about the Bills, and being in the Bills kind of podcasting circle or quote unquote media circle, I hear a lot of different things, and most of them I scoff at, and I rightfully scoff at them and find out that they are very, very untrue and completely false. And it's not good for this area. It's not good for this area to have misinformation about a team that everybody is indebted to, that everybody has been passed down generation to generation as far as how their fanhood started, much like mine. My fanhood started within my grandfather's generation, passed down father's generation, and obviously to me. So the Buffalo Bills mean a lot to me. They mean a lot to all the fans that I talk to on a daily basis, whether I'm talking to them on social media or just in the neighborhood of Western New York, within the community. They're a topic of discussion. And when you have reports about the Bills moving, we have heard reports about the Bills moving for years. But this is different. This is a report about the Bills moving with the Pegula ownership era. Within the Pegula ownership era, there is now a story about the Bills potentially moving to Austin. And the exact story is that Austin emerges as a possible relocation spot for the Bills amid new Orchard Park Stadium negotiations per report. Now, Tyler Sullivan of CBS Sports was the first to report this, and then obviously you had ESPN's Seth Winkersham report that Austin, Texas is a possible destination. But what this is, and this is really what this is not a report. This is not something that is in the works. Truthfully, this is a veiled threat by Terry Pegula and Kim Pegula towards the New York State taxpayers, myself included, that if they do not get their tax money for this new stadium, as well as renovations to KeyBank Center, that, hey, teams move because of these things. The Cleveland Browns moved because of it. They moved from Cleveland to Baltimore. The NFL didn't have the Cleveland Browns for a few years until they were brought back into the league. A couple years later, the Baltimore Colts moved to Indianapolis due to the stadium issues that they had had. The majority of teams that have moved in the history of the National Football League have moved due to stadium issues. Most recently, the Oakland Raiders, formerly the Oakland Raiders, moved to Las Vegas because they could not get a stadium in LA due to the fact that the Rams were already moving there and due to the fact that the Rams and Chargers will share a stadium, SoFi Stadium, as they have the last few seasons. So the Raiders are the most obvious example of a team that recently moved due to the fact that there were stadium negotiation problems. So the face value of this is concerning because the Bills do need a new stadium in order to stay viable and competitive with some of the other teams in the National Football League. It is just the way of the NFL now. We see these ritzy, glitzy, glamorous stadiums. It's safe to say that the Bills don't need that. We and I can speak for myself, I can speak for a lot of others in this, Buffalonians still want a blue-collar football tailgating experience with whatever stadium we play in, whether it's the stadium we're currently playing in or a new one. We want that same experience. We want that experience to be one that we can enjoy and understand as a throwback experience. So the real question is, as Bills fans, should we be worried about this report? The Austin Bills, should we be worried? And I truthfully feel, as I ask you guys to fire away your comments in the comment section below, I will get to them on my own social media time, being that this podcast is, of course, pre-recorded. This is not a live show. I truthfully feel that on one hand, I'm worried. On one hand, I'm worried because of the fact that this is a report about a team that is in need of a new stadium, and that is, as I mentioned, the majority of the reason why these teams have moved the last few years. They've moved because of the fact that they needed new stadium sites, and new stadium sites were not within the area that they play in. Buffalo Bills have, a couple months back, put forth a production plan on a new stadium that would bulldoze the Orchard Park location currently, known as Highmark Stadium now, but my generation calls it the Ralph. My dad's generation calls it Rich Stadium. My grandfather's generation would probably still call it the Rock Pile, even though it's not even in the same building. So when I look at this and say to myself, okay, I look at that report a few months back, the Bills are working towards something because this lease is running out that Mark Poloncarz set up within the Buffalo Bills, within Erie County, right? So this stadium discussion is only going to continue. I'm not worried that the Bills are going to move because, truthfully, I can attest to this, raise my hand to God, and say that if the Bills need my taxpayer money to fund a stadium, if it keeps the Buffalo Bills here for my son or daughter's generation and their son or their daughter's generation, and moving on and onward and upward, generation after generation, like it has for me, I would be willing to pay the bill for that. Not the full bill, obviously, but my share, my taxpayer dollars of the bill for that. Call me crazy, but I need these guys in my area. I need the Buffalo Bills in my area. They are what makes this area what it is, what makes this community a community. And without that, this area would drastically suffer. But before I get into that, the real reason we should be worried as Bills fans is not because of one story versus another. It's the fact that, to me, this offseason, the coverage surrounding the Buffalo Bills preparation for the 2021 season has been nothing but that. It has been everything about the vaccine. It has been everything about Josh Allen getting vaccinated or Cole Beasley getting vaccinated. Of course, Cole Beasley has, put a target on his back in terms of the tweeting and stuff like that. And he would even admit to that himself, that, when he puts out these statements, he's going to get a response for it, right? Whether people agree or disagree. But these stories are negative distractions to the Buffalo Bills. And for as united as I believe this locker room is, for as high character of an individual as Sean McDermott is as a coach and as a man, and how he can unite his players, unify the locker room. He's done that since day one. These stories are not good stories. These stories are distractions for a team that has their best chance in 25, 26, 27 years, however long it's been, to go back to another Super Bowl. They're one of the best four teams in the NFL. Last season told us that. Between the Bills, between the Chiefs in the AFC title game, as well as the Bucs and the Packers in the NFC title game, every year is different, of course. I say that on every single show that I record. But the Bills are set up for greatness long-term as well. But this year, this window of opportunity is so small with the players that we have under contract at the number that they are, that the Bills need to take advantage of this opportunity that they have. And if they don't, and if they fall short because of these stupid stories that continue to just be badgered by, whether it's the local media or the national media, they are distractions. The media doesn't realize it because they have a job to do. I understand that. I understand what their job is. It is to bring stories to limelight and generate attention for stories that are stories. This is a story. But a lot of these reports are reports. This news comes as Bills ownership put forward, yes, legitimately an initial $1.5 billion proposal for a new stadium. But this was all according to the Buffalo News. And I have read a lot of things in regards to this report that it is untrue. So real reason to be worried is, yeah, this story is concerning, but a reason to be worried, a real reason to be worried, is the simple fact that there are these negative stories surrounding this team, and I don't know what stories are true and what stories are false. I can't trust my local media enough or the national media enough to report these stories. It's almost like a wait and see approach that I have to this story. And that's not good for this community. It's not good for the Bills. It's not good for the Bills fans. It's not good for Bills Nation. So I look at this as a veiled threat, reported veiled threat that I just don't see happening. When Terry Pegula bought the Buffalo Bills in October of 2014, I truly believed then, and I believe it now, that the Buffalo Bills will never move as long as Terry Pegula and the Pegula family has ownership of the team. I know a lot of things have changed since then, the pandemic included. The Sabres had massive cuts to their staff due to the fact that there were some cost-cutting measures by ownership in these trying times. But the Pegulas have turned a pretty solid profit for the Buffalo Bills, even while overbidding for the Buffalo Bills to purchase the team 7 years ago. So they've been very successful as NFL owners, or they have been unsuccessful as NHL owners. They have been extremely successful as NFL owners. So I am very excited to see this season. I want to use my platform on this show to only talk about the season and not glorify these stories that we really don't know if they're true. We don't know if they're even half true. We don't even know if they're a quarter true. We don't even know if we can trust the information that we're getting. These are just reports. And honestly, this time of year, August, you go back to each and every NFL offseason. This is the time of year in the NFL offseason calendar where these stories are just fodder, just chatter for us to talk about prior to the season starting. And then the season starts and these stories are, washed away like nothing. So I'm not really giving this story much of a thought, but the reason why it worries me is the simple fact that this is a huge distraction to the Bills players, to the Bills coaches, to the Bills fans, from what is supposed to be one of the better seasons in recent memory. And anyone that disagrees with that, anyone that says that, we should be worried that the Bills will move, I'm not worried that the Bills are going to move. But what would happen if the Bills did move? What would I do as Buffalo Bills podcaster if the Buffalo Bills did in fact move? I tell you this, the stuff on this wall would remain forever, as long as I'm in this home. The stuff on this wall would remain, but let me tell you that the fandom that I would have for the NFL would completely disappear, would completely vanish. I would barely watch it. Because if you take a city away from the NFL, if you take a city like Buffalo away from the NFL, if you take a fan base from the NFL like Buffalo's, you're ruining what made the NFL what it is today. These blue collar fan bases like Buffalo, like Cleveland, like Minnesota, that they're trying each and every day, each and every year, I should say, to take away that type of fan experience with this new glitzy, glamorous experience. Let's face it, football is football. It's supposed to be gritty. It's supposed to be tough. It's supposed to be dirty in the sense that they're playing, on grass, in the dirt, whether it's artificial or not. And I think that that's been slowly but surely taken away as the league has tried to become safer. And I'm okay with that. That portion of it I'm okay with, but I'm not okay with the possibility of the Bills moving. And I don't even think it's a possibility. I really don't. But what would happen if the Bills did move? This area would crumble. Western New York would crumble if the Buffalo Bills moved. More than it already has. And I hate to say that, but this area is, as much as we get back up after a long, tough fight, we get up each and every time, but we can only be knocked down so many times. That, to me, would be an irreversible, I guess I should say, it would cause irreversible damage to this community if, in fact, the Buffalo Bills did move. So the Austin Bills, am I giving this much of a thought? No, I'm really not. But in terms of the storylines, these negative stories that have surrounded the Buffalo Bills prior to this season starting, I can't remember a season in recent memory where with this many stories prior to a Bills season were this negative, especially for a season that is supposed to be a great season. And I think that's why. I think people know this team is legit. People know that this team has an opportunity to win a Super Bowl this year, and they want to throw as many negative stories at us as possible. And to see it happen from within our own media is concerning. I'm Ryan Thomas. It was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Take care. Stay safe. Plenty more coming up.